Hey everybody, my name's Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest serving in the beautiful parish of Christchurch-Shelburne that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. When I turned 16, my parents let me drive their great big brand new Capri Classic. Wonderful car. I remember it being kind of like silverish. Anyway, one day, soon after getting my driver's license, I think 4 days after getting my driver's license, I introduced the car to a telephone pole. And the car and the telephone pole, they sort of fought it out, and the telephone pole won. It taught my parents a valuable lesson, and that is they should never let me drive their vehicle again. And so they bought me a K car. Now, I don't know if that translates to our American friends or to our European friends. The bottom line, it's called a Plymouth Reliant. It was a 1980 Plymouth Reliant. It was pretty much a plastic car. Now, the thing I remember about this car is that when I drove it on the highway, the hood would shake, right? And the faster I drove, the faster the hood would shake, and the latches were all in place, and everything was secure, and everything was tight. We had it looked at, but this thing would shake. And we were just told, well, that's just what they do. Don't worry about it. It won't come flying off. But on the highway, doing 80 or 90 or 100 kilometers an hour, that was a little disconcerting. And so while I had that car, I avoided the highway. Now, thankfully, where I grew up, that wasn't hard to do. Driving to work, I couldn't take the highway to drive to work because it was all road. So I would drive, you do 50 or 60, you didn't have to worry about it. You come home, 50 or 60, you didn't have to worry about the hood. Going to school, I didn't have to, you drive through the town, so you didn't have to worry about the hood doing its thing. You could just drive to school through town. Then, because I was only driving it at relatively slow speeds, what ended up happening was it would start to hiccup, and it would start to sort of choke and die, and it would, all of a sudden it would get a big burst of fuel, and then it would do nothing, and it just felt like a really, really bad car. And what I found out was, by taking it to the mechanic, was that it was developing a carbon in the engine. Apparently, those engines could get dirty because you weren't driving fast enough, and so all the excess carbon built up inside the engine, and eventually it started choking it out. And the thing the mechanic told me to do was take it on the highway. For God's sakes, take it on the highway and run it. So I'd take it on the highway, and it would do its thing. But sure enough, it cleaned out the carbon. Why am I telling you all this? So why am I telling you all this? Well, what it reminds me of is love. I didn't love the car. It's not what I'm getting at. I still have nightmares about the car. But it's a similar thing. Driving that car, I had to take it on the highway despite the fact that it was really uncomfortable, despite the fact that I was terrified at any moment that hood was going to go flying off. I had to take the car on the highway in order so that the car would operate properly. And I think love is the same way. We have to take it out and we have to use it. We have to put it through its paces. We have to challenge it. We have to take it in places where it feels like it could go flying off the rails at any moment. Love is challenging. Loving our neighbors is challenging. Loving our friends and family is challenging. Loving ourselves is challenging. The overall practice of love is incredibly challenging. It's not necessarily a comfortable thing to do. It's fraught with danger. It's fraught with the possibility of being harmed and hurt. But we're called. We're called to do it. We're called to use it. And when we don't use it, we end up getting this backlog inside of ourselves, and we don't feel quite right. And we start seeing the world differently, and we start stumbling through the world differently. But when we practice love, things get set right. The world looks the way it's supposed to look. It feels the way it's supposed to feel. We move through it the way we're supposed to move through it. It's really imperative that we practice loving one another. It's imperative that we practice loving ourselves, forgiving one another, being charitable to one another, teaching one another, praising each other, empathizing with each other, offering mercy and grace to people who don't deserve it, reaching out and lifting people up who have fallen down all on their own without any help from us, giving to people who haven't earned it. There's 1,000 different ways we can love the people around us. 1,000,000 different ways we can love the people around us. And the more we practice those things, the more we practice doing those things, including doing the things that make us feel like everything's about to go flying off the rails, as painful as they might be, as uncomfortable as they might be, as challenging as they might be, in the end, it does us the world of good. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and the Lord's grace rain down over you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up for you. May you know the peace of always being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that even though it feels like the hood's about to go flying off at any moment, you will offer love to everyone you encounter, including that person you see looking at you in the mirror. Amen.